All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the campus of Missouri Southern State University. We're happy to have you here. This is the first Entrepreneurship Speaker Series for this semester. We are happy to welcome John Hunter. John Hunter is the president and CEO of American Ramp Company at Atlas Safe Rooms. He also co-owns University Plaza LLC, J&J Properties, and Gusanos Pizza in Joplin. For the last 15 years, John has led a team that has developed thousands of skate and bike park facilities across the globe, including 50 states and 46 countries. Over the years, John has contributed to national publications and has been a speaker in both state and international recreation trail conferences. He is a national ambassador for the nonprofit All Kids Bike, a partner in Be Good Foundation. John serves on the foundation board for Crowder College, as well as the Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors Executive Committee. Please join me in welcoming John Hunter.
Thank you. I'll have to admit, I haven't been in this building in a while, but I did have business classes here, and because I parked on the other side of campus thinking that I was in the right place, and Katie was like, "Hey, do you know where you're going?" And I had to say, I should, because I used to give tours of this college when I was a Southern ambassador. And then I walked in, and one of my ex-professors here was like, "Hey, you're running late as usual." So here I am. I don't remember this being here, but it was here. Maybe I was or wasn't. I'll tell you a funny. I'll tell you a funny story. One time I was, and for a while I lived just right next to. When I was going to Southern, I lived in these North Park apartments, so I had no excuse to be late, because if you just stumbled out of my apartment and across the grass, you were here. One time I was walking in, this girl, and this is a good maybe entrepreneur think on the fly story. We had a test or something. I don't know if it was for your class, Dr. Abrams, but she pulled up into the circle here, which I think there's still a circle there, and popped her hood, and then just walked in the building, and it was like. She assumed that her car broke down right there, but she didn't want to be late for class. But so don't do that. I don't do that. But that was actually, I thought that was a really good thinking on the fly. So yeah, I'm John Hunter. When people ask me what I do, I usually say American Ramp Company, because that's the main thing. But then I realize, not everybody in our community knows what that is. Has everyone here heard of American Ramp Company? Familiar with? If you have. Raise your hand. This is okay, so maybe half the room. So American Ramp Company, we're only the world's largest action sports park builder, so, and we're based in Joplin. That's pretty cool. We've kind of had our head down and been really focused on, our mission and what we do. And then at some point we looked up and we're like, hey, there's a lot of people in our community that don't know that we exist here. And so we've tried to be intentional about being more involved, and it's really mattered, because as we've grown, we've needed to, recruit talent, get people from our community to work for our organization, and also bring people from the outside world. So hopefully, we're trying to be more intentional to grow that team, and it's really important to us that we're involved in the community, because as we've grown, we've realized that hey, we want to make sure that we can make a positive impact on the community, for our employees and their families, and so hopefully you start to see that focus. I had a slideshow, but I transferred it to a thumb drive, and then now it came corrupted. It was really short, but I was thinking the fact that it says corrupted feels like this kind of espionage thing. They maybe should change. It's who corrupted it? But it was just a couple things, cool projects that American Ramp Company is working on, and what we do. And so yeah, American Ramp Company's been around for 27 years this year. We are the world's largest action sports park builder, so we build skate parks, bike parks, all the way through. So from the relationships with the clients, developing the idea on our sales and development team, to design, construction documents, engineering, manufacturing, project management, on-site construction, installation, and even branding of those projects for the communities, and creating content. So really full suite, from start to finish when it comes to that type of park development. And we've added those elements, as we've grown. We've built projects in 46 countries, every U.S. state, every Canadian province. We have a Canadian division called Canadian Ramp Company. It's easier to, it's easier to operate in Canada if you are Canadian, have a Canadian company, and so our parent company owns a subsidiary in Canada. We've built projects in every climate imaginable, including like north of the Arctic Circle. We have a couple projects that they wanted skate parks for the 2 months that the weather was acceptable, and it's like, we think that's a great idea. So we've got to be a part of a lot of really cool projects, and one that's really cool. There's a skate park in Joplin that we were able to build, several years ago. But something that we've been working on with the city is like, man, Joplin needs a bike park. We see what's going on in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of our people, including me, are cyclists, and quality of life is a huge thing when you're talking about, attracting and retaining talent. And so we've seen that pay off in Northwest Arkansas. We see that pay off in places throughout, throughout the United States, and that's a big focus. So Joplin we're underway and probably have about a month left to completing the largest bike park in the state of Missouri in Joplin, which is really, really exciting. Yeah, that's a big deal. And what's cool is we're already seeing that impact. The name was released. It was Momentum, which is very fitting because it's fun and the logo. So our team works with communities to help design like the logo and the brand, because if most cities think like cities, and which is a good thing for their kind of linear, hey, we need to get this stuff done, manage the day-to-day, but they usually aren't thinking like a business, and they will build a facility under the guise that like, hey, it's going to bring people to the community, but then they just name it something really lame, and it has a really lame logo, and it's just Arial font. So we realized that at one point that it's like, hey, we need to come alongside them. It's like they're going to invest $6 million in a facility thinking people are going to come, and then it's just like the Champaign, Illinois bike park. It's like, well, that's kind of lame. And you can look at Northwest Arkansas, and it has this brand, Oz Trails, and the people that developed that brand and that concept really think business. And so as we were working with communities, we're like, hey, we're going to develop a whole spin-off, side of our organization called Spoke and Wheel that does logo design, helps with naming, creates content, video, web and video. And that's something that really just, a couple years ago we've started, and then with really great success. And so you'll see that in the Joplin project as you start to see content coming out. You see the logo, it's Momentum, and the Mo is has a separate identifier color-wise in all the logo options, so it's Momentum, which is really fitting for I think what's going on in our community. Is there's a lot of momentum. So that's exciting. That's probably one of the, it's not the biggest project we've ever done by any means, but it's one of the most important projects we've ever done because like we're getting to use that, all the time. And Elizabeth, who's sitting here's husband Roy works for us, and he's the project manager making sure all that happens. So anyway, it's really cool because it's just a close community, community project. So the other thing that I was going to show you on our slide that I couldn't talk about until about 5 days ago is that we get to do really, really cool projects. And so there would be this amazing picture of this vert ramp for Meta on Hack Square. So like Meta, so like Facebook, Instagram, Meta, we're like, hey, we want you guys, can you come and build a giant vert ramp, which is what you see like Tony Hawk skate, we need you to build it in like 4 days, and you can't make any noise because we're not going to close the campus, and we want it to be like twice as big as a normal vert ramp for this Meta Connect event. So I don't know if it's where there's some news, like Zuckerberg was showcasing the new Meta glasses and they didn't work. Well, we had a half pipe at that event that did work. Zuckerberg didn't skate it, but he did post a picture of it, which was cool. And so what's exciting is like we're getting to build these projects for communities, large and small, but we're also getting to do some of this fun corporate stuff, which is really cool for our team. So we just literally, that event happened last week, and we could just now talk about it because we had to sign an NDA, leading up to that project. So yeah, that's America Ramp Company. There were some other things that were mentioned, and normally when people say, hey, what do you do? I say, hey, I work for America Ramp Company. We build skate parks and bike parks. But we also have Atlas Safe Rooms, which is a super regional tornado shelter, storm shelter company. We have a little restaurant, Gusanos, which is close to here, and then some commercial and residential real estate. So I think at one point, and we just rolled 7 companies into an ESOP, so we became employee-owned just over a year ago, which is really exciting on the ARC Atlas side. But at one point, we had 15 entities that had to file taxes and were operational, and so that's really irresponsible. When you're really young, you're like, you want to own 15 businesses? That's a great idea. It's a horrible idea. Don't do that. It's like, and I mean, once you build out the infrastructure and the right people, it could kind of work. But we're trying to make things simpler and focus on a few things and do those things really, really well. So that's what I do today. That's that's the things that I'm managing, the things that we're focusing on. But where I started, and just a little bit about me. I grew up in Knoll, Missouri. It was a little town on the river in Missouri. My family was there because my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and he had a resort from like the 60s to the early 80s called Ginger Blue. It was this resort right on the river in Knoll, and that's why my family moved there. I grew up. I lived with my mom. She had MS, so and I lived with her. So we lived in government housing. We didn't have a car, but I had like really good examples because I had family members that were owned resorts and successful and entrepreneurs in themselves. So I didn't know any better. But one of the things that's probably a natural part of my story and why I have a proclivity for cycling and bikes is at a very young age, like my uncle who owned a bunch of shopping centers in Tulsa. I'd go spend time with him, and we were in a shopping center. I was probably 8 or 9. And there was a bike shop, in one of those shopping centers. And I think he was just going around and collecting cash rent, which I know why he was doing that now and insisting that they pay cash. We don't, which was great. And he would just take me around, and people would just hand him cash. It was really cool because I didn't have any money, and people were just handing money every time I walked into the door. But one of the things, the owner of that bike shop was like, "Hey, pick out a bike." And so I got to pick out like a really great, cool bike. So I probably had the nicest bike in Knoll, Missouri when I was 9 years old. And one of the reasons that was really important, one, because it's awesome to have a cool bike, but two, like if we needed to go get like milk or eggs or whatever, like I would just, my mom like, "Hey, go to the store," you just ride your bike to the store. And so I would go do that, and I didn't have a basket or anything because that's not cool to be on a mountain bike. You have a basket or something on a mountain bike. And so I would, carry something with one hand, and I got really good riding with no hands. And one of the things like this memory that I have that lives with me forever is my mom, who was super tough, and it's like this tough love thing, which for me worked, and it was a really good thing. I was riding, it's like a mile and a half from the store to our house, and something happened. I had a bump or whatever, and I wrecked, and I had like milk and eggs or whatever. So then I walk into the house kind of bloody, and my mom's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Oh, I had a wreck. It's terrible." She's like, "No, what happened to the groceries?" And it's like, okay. You have to go back and get milk. So I became really, really good at riding with no hands, and that's like, and I fell in love with cycling and bikes and with what that can do, at the individual level, at the community level, just to like that kind of first bit of freedom, go wherever you want. And so that leads into like my passion for cycling, building bike parks, but also working with schools at education level. There's this Strider Foundation, which has an all-kids bike program that basically works to bring it at the kindergarten and first grade level cycling, learn to cycle programs in kindergarten just as part of that PE curriculum. And so that's huge. It gets more kids on bikes, and which also means those communities are more likely to have a demand for bike parks, which is kind of another business reason to think that's a really good idea. That's where like I first fell in love with bikes and still have this love for bikes, and also realize, hey, when you wreck and you spill the milk, you just get back up and keep going. But my first real business was my grandfather owned a resort in Southwest Missouri, and in the 80s he sold that and he moved to Colorado, and he bought Silverton, Colorado is this tourist town, and there's a train that goes between Durango and Silverton. And so my grandfather bought this like gift shop, it was like a restaurant, gift shop, and like candy store, and I would go there for a month every summer, spend a month, in Silverton, which was really, really cool. But when I was there, and I was, probably from the time I was about 9 to 12, I would go there every summer for a month, and I would sell rocks to the tourists. So the train would stop, people would get off the train, and there were some other local kids that would do this. And so we would go like hike up to the mine, because there's like mines all around Silverton that you can even see from town. You just hike up to the mine with a backpack, you get shiny, pretty rocks, you come down, you put them in your trailer, and then when people get off the train, you're like, rocks for sale. I was from Missouri, so I didn't know what like the going rate for rocks were. And I was 9, I didn't know how to price a rock. I was either gonna be probably too much or too little. So I just like name your own price on rocks, which this is before Priceline. And so William Shatner probably saw that, and that's where they got the idea for the name your own Priceline thing. But it worked really well because there's just this kid sitting in the corner selling these shiny rocks, and I was just like, name your own price, and of course somebody would say, they'd usually pay more than I ever would have asked them. Somebody would be like, how about I'll give you a penny, and it's like, if you can live with yourself, buddy. I gotta buy ice cream when we're done. So, but that was my real first business, and the reason for doing that is like, oh, that's something to do. It's fun. You get to interact with people. And really, I wanted to be able to, buy ice cream. And I really ended up at the end of the summer with a lot of money for a 9, 10-year-old. And I bought a lot of knives, which somebody should have been. I didn't do anything with. I said they were cool. They might have elk horns. I don't know where they went, but I spent an inordinate amount of money on souvenirs in that town every year. That was my first business. And now the cool thing is there is a documentary that just came out a couple years ago called Rocks for Sale, and it's about the kids in that town that did that. And the town, it became such like kind of this iconic business, through the years that they had to cap the ages because I think some older people were like, well, I'm going to go compete with these kids and sell rocks. So the town was like, hey, once you're 13, you've aged out of being able to sell rocks in Silverton. And my granddad didn't love it because he sold rocks, that he probably bought from China. Mine were more authentic in his gift shop or whatever. So I was actually competing with him, and I'm sure I outsold him when it came to rocks. But that was my first business. And then whenever I like the idea of like, hey, I'm interacting with people, I'm offering something, I have to work to go get these rocks and sell them, and that was part of my story. It's like I hiked way up there. If you want to pay me a penny, it's kind of a lot of work. So then when I came back, and whenever I was just not in Colorado selling rocks, I was like, man, that was fun, kind of having my own thing. What do I do now? And so then we had like a push lawnmower. And so I had like a teacher like, hey, can I mow your lawn? And so I would push, I'm in Knoll, so you can push a lawnmower just about anywhere. So I would mow. I mowed a couple teachers' lawns, and then where it kind of went a little parabolic and my business grew was my math teacher had this. I mowed her lawn, and then the house next door, the grass was really, really tall. So I was like, okay, I'll start to mow that too. I didn't know where her lawn ended and the other one began. And she came out, she's like, oh, that's not mine. And it was really, really terrible. She's like, nobody lives there. The bank owns that. And I was like, well, I already started, so I finished mowing it. And then I went to the bank in Knoll. This at the time, it was like State Bank in Knoll. And I was like, hey, and I was maybe 10. And I walked in there with a lawnmower in the parking lot. And I was like, I just wanted to let you guys know I mowed the lawn next to Miss Copeland's house or whatever. And it's a small town, so they knew who that was. And she said, you owned it. I just wanted you to know I did it. I don't want to get in trouble. And then the bank, and then the whoever, I'm sure it wasn't the bank president, but somebody there was like, oh, hey, come in here. And it's like, here's $20. Thanks for mowing the lawn. And then I was like, you got any other lawns that I can mow? So I had like 6 or 7 bank-owned property lawns for a couple years. And I thought, oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. So those were my first businesses. I graduated. I went to Southern. I spent time working for John Q. Hammonds, running the convention center and banquet facilities, and that was really good because I got to interact with a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurship. We'd have Business Expo there, and full circle. What's interesting is when I was probably 19 or 20, while I was at Southern, I was also managing that facility, working 40, 50 hours a week. But they would have Business Expo there, and the chamber would run that. And because I was working with them the entire time, set up, during, tear down, or whatever, they would have like their dinner afterwards. And the chamber president at the time, Rob O'Brien, who was there for probably 26 years, he was like, hey, John, you're a part of the team. Let's go have dinner. So I'm like a 19-year-old kid feeling cool. Like, the chambers is a big deal, especially the one in Joplin. Having dinner with all the chamber people after Expo. And it was like, hey, that show went really, really great. Now I'm, all these things are kind of full circle because now I'm, helping to hire a new chamber president and, and the incoming chair on that board. So what is cool and interesting and what I've seen over time is just the exposure to those things just kind of catalyze and snowball, and there's so many of those full circle things. I mentioned that I am co-owner of University Plaza, which is the shopping center that Gusanos exists in. It also is a shopping center that Atlas Safe Rooms existed in. And so when I left John Q. Hammond's, I went to work to sell insurance and like some asset protection stuff for insurance for this an insurance agency that was there. It's like, hey, this will be fun. I want to grow this division. John, you should come come work for us. And so I did, and I had an office in that shopping center. And so through that process, this insurance company was heavily leveraged in trucking, and it was like 2009. Trucking wasn't going super well. And he's like, hey, man, we're going to have to downsize. Sorry, we'll have to let you go because we're downsizing and we're even closing this office. And so I got fired, from in an office that now I own the whole building. So that's kind of like a full circle wild thing. And then the interesting thing is those guys were also trying to open a restaurant. And at the time it was going to be called this University Sports Grill. And obviously they couldn't do that. And so that just kind of sat there empty for a little while. And then Gusanos came in, Gusanos corporate came in like, hey, we want to have a pizza place in Joplin. And I was helping them kind of start that restaurant at the beginning because they had, I had food and beverage service experience from John Q. Hammond's. And then now, again, full circle, it's like there's some of the layout in that restaurant and the way that it flows, and I probably didn't have as much restaurant experience as I needed to, and they were taking all this advice from me. It's like I managed a 60,000 square foot square banquet facility that was very manipulatable, and they're like, John, how should we lay all this out? And I was working in their insurance office, so I was like, yeah, this is how we should do this. Now, if you go into Gusanos and you're like, what is all this wasted space, and why is the kitchen so big? It's because they let like a 22-year-old with no restaurant experience decide how some of that layout should work and where things should go. And so it's funny because a bunch of the people on our staff don't know. They're like, why don't we have room here? And I don't say, like, that was me when I had no experience. Why is the kitchen so large? It's like, I don't know. It seemed like there needed to be more room at the time. So it's really, really interesting because so many of those things, relationships, situations are full circle. And what you realize is like people making the decisions at every level, like generally, hopefully they're trying to do their best, but nobody has all the answers. And I think that's the thing that I've learned the most as I've grown in business and continue to grow in business. I remember when I was, very young, I would look at, people, my grandfather, my teachers, professors, other business owners, and you're like, oh, that guy's must have it all figured out. Now I think there's probably people that are, that are younger, and they maybe look at me and like, oh, I bet it looks like he has it all figured out. It's absolutely not. I mean, it is it's always a process, and it seems like the more you know you don't know. It's like this Dunning-Kruger effect. If someone's like, I have it all figured out, it's like they absolutely have nothing. They don't know. They know the least if they think they have it all figured out. And that's been the most surprising. If somebody asked me, it's like, what is the most surprising thing from where you started to where you were? And it was that, like, you can take a CEO of organization of any size, or a professor that's been somewhere a long time. It's like you can assume that they have the answers, and the reality is that they don't. But they recognize it's a process, and they just try to surround themselves with the right people, continue to grow, and do the right things. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was if make sure it's interactive. If you guys have questions, about me, my journey, my experience, please interrupt me at any time. Raise your hand. But yeah, so my path has really been where once I started at American Ramp Company and I started there in a sales role. So I started in a sales role in 2007. In 2008, I became the sales manager, and the next year, the vice president of sales and operations. At that point, American Ramp Company was probably a stable, $8 million company that's doing manufacturing, which is a good size, company in Joplin. That's the revenue that we were generating. And then a couple years in about 2012, I was like, hey, I have this passion for cycling. I really want to go this direction. And so we started investing in, team members and developing ramps and design infrastructure for cycling, for pump tracks. And we were recognizing some things that were going on in Europe, like these hard surface pump track concepts. And so we brought that to the United States. And so most of our growth, and this is what's interesting, at the exact same time, we had this manufacturing facility in Joplin that had a lot of capacity. And so the Joplin tornado happened, and a lot of folks on our team are like, hey, we want tornado shelters. And we had engineers work for us for a long time. They're like, man, I've seen what's in the market. Like, we could design and build something that's better. And so we made a decision there. It's like, okay, that helps fill some manufacturing capacity that serves a giant need, to people in the community where there's a demand, but also people in our organization. They're like, I want to feel safe. So we actually, right at the same time, we started a bike infrastructure line, progressive bike ramps, Velo Solutions asphalt pump tracks, but also Atlas safe rooms, which again, like looking back, like doing all of that stuff in the same year at the same time with the same team was a challenge. It worked out. I would say that there's probably 5 times it's like, oh, we're about to go out of business. We did too much, but we're still here, and we're vibrant and growing, and those things have grown. And what it's taken is understanding things simply, and then getting the right team of people involved, and then giving them autonomy, but making sure that you understand it well enough that you can properly challenge them. And that's probably been what's led to most of our growth is like, hey, who are some really good people that are hungry, humble, honest, make sure that you understand what you're asking them to do, and that it's something that can be done, and then send them on their way, and make sure you have good feedback loops through that process. And so taking that route, Atlas has grown to, just on its own, it's one of the largest storm shelter safe room companies in the United States. And something that's really cool that we've just, opportunities that have existed, it's like, hey, we're going to put family-sized tornado shelters in garages for people that need to be protected from tornadoes. And then that spanned to like larger businesses wanting that same thing. It grew to serving schools, several safe rooms for several hundred people. And then about 5 years ago, we had people that were ordering them, and they were like, they weren't wanting them installed on a concrete slab. They were less interested in the tornado protection aspect and more in like secure storage. And a lot of those were happening in like Colorado and then quickly Oklahoma. And we're like, what? And why? I asked my sales team, it's like, why? How are we selling all these large shelters so quickly? And it's like, all of this cannabis, marijuana facilities, they need to store money and they need to store product, and a lot of them, they can't put their money in a bank, and so they literally were buying our safe rooms for giant safes. And it was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's talk to more of those people. And so then our sales team, created, a specific marketing channel to target those people. And then it was like, and then it's more secure storage. And so right now our team's actually, we just shipped a couple really large Atlas safe rooms, but for secure storage to California for like embryonic storage, because there's so many different like large format, like secure storage things that are needed, that this product has like filled that void. So whether it's server rooms, or locking up narcotics or something like that for like a pharmacy or emergency services, it's like that was just something that one we didn't plan for it, but we reacted to it. It was like, oh, that's there's this interesting demand there, and then we just leaned into that. And that's what's happened. We've done things intentionally, but we've also been really responsive to like, okay, where is this opportunity going to take us? And that's happened in the companies themselves, but also in the process of like, hey, how did you guys end up with 15 entities that you've got to do finances for and pay taxes for? It's exactly that same thing. And so back to the Gusanos University Plaza story, Atlas was growing. We had a showroom in the mall in Joplin. We have showrooms in other malls and other places. But we had a showroom in the mall in Joplin, and we were like, this mall's not very busy. We don't want to pay mall rent. Let's find our own space. And so we were looking for a small, a small showroom space with maybe some storage in the back on either Range Line, 7th, 32nd. We want to keep it simple. And then a realtor came to me and was like, hey, there's a shopping center for sale. And then we just ran the numbers, and we knew that there were some units. There were 3 units empty at the time. We knew we were going to take one. I knew somebody else that wanted one, and so we were able to get a pretty good deal on it, and we moved Atlas into that shopping center. And I told my partners, I was like, hey, this is a really good deal. Gusanos is there. They have a 5-year lease. As long as they keep, they pay 40% of the 10-unit rent. So as long as they're there, we're golden. Then we could be at 70% occupancy, and we're totally fine. I'm like, okay, whatever you say, John. Then a year into that, the guy who owns Gusanos corporate came to me. He's like, John, I don't want to be in Joplin anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, Northwest Arkansas is growing. That's where my focus is. I'll buy out of my lease. Like, I'll pay half the remaining lease up front. Here's 80 grand. Walk away, find somebody else to go in there. The challenge and the reality is restaurants are difficult, especially restaurants as anchors and shopping centers are difficult. And we've seen, a lot of that, through this community. And that doesn't just hurt the restaurant itself, but also the businesses surrounding, if that's like kind of a revolving door. It's like, man, I love Gusanos. It's been here. It's great. We want to be in the community. So in that conversation, I was like, well, how about this? How about you don't pay us anything? We're just going to keep everybody employed, keep the brand, which is good for the overall brand. We'll keep this store. We'll follow all your recipes. We'll buy from your same vendors, so you still have that purchasing power. But we're going to take all the equipment, and we're not going to pay franchise fees unless we really start to make money. And he's like, okay. That was in the same conversation. It was like a 10-minute, so then I called my partners. I was like, bad news, Gusanos wanted out. Good news, we are in the pizza business. And that was 7 years ago. And really, that's how so many things have happened. It's like, hey, there's an opportunity here. What are the risks? What are the benefits? And for us, that was the largest, that was our largest tenant and still is from paying rent in that shopping center. And I kind of had pressure. It was like, hey, guys, this works as long as Gusanos there. So I made sure it was there. And the cool thing about that is the pressure for us for running that restaurant is it really just need to pay its rent. Like, it doesn't have to make a bunch of money. And without that pressure, it kind of makes it easier to make the right decisions, to take better care of people, to be really customer service focused, because there's not that pressure to like, hey, I've got to feed my family off of this. At some level, once you get to ARC or whatever, that is the reality. But with that, it's like, hey, we have low pressure. And the cool thing is, if someone comes to us and says, hey, John, can you donate something to this, to this auction or our company, or it's a school? It's like, well, I can't really donate a skate park, And writing a check's less fun, but now that we have Gusanos, it's become this really cool way to give back to the community. It's like, we give away a ton of pizza, and that's awesome. Everybody likes pizza, and Gusanos pizza is the best, if you ask me. And so that's the direction. That's the direction that we've gone with a bunch of different things. We just, we've tried to do the right thing, and then opportunities have just kind of created and come up, and then we've leaned into those opportunities. And right now we're at the place of this new growth cycle for American Ramp Company, because we started, in 2010, 11, 12, we were, about an $8 to $10 million company. Now that's over $50 million in annual revenue, which has been really cool, because when we started, we had a lot of competitors, and those competitors some were bigger than us, some were the same size as us, but because we evolved, and we leaned into those opportunities, we've created markets. And so 3 years ago in the bike space, like hard surface pump track space, which if you don't know what it is, Google it, it's really cool. Joplin will have one, come ride it. There were really no competitors in the United States in that space. And now we just had our national conference last week in Orlando, and there's like 7 pretty decent sized companies in that space competing with us. And our sales team's like, oh, what the heck, this competition just arose. And it's like, well, it's our fault. Like, we created this market, we created this competition, and then I was, it's like, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, that mediocrity pays to greatness. That's the rest of that, most people say the first part of that. The other half of that is like, is much rougher. That's what I use at our national conference with our sales team. But the reality is, 20 years ago in the skate park industry, at that same conference, there were probably 20 companies that were like, hey, skating's on trend, it's growing, we want to get involved, and a lot of the playground companies got involved, and there were 20 companies representing and selling skate parks, many of them much bigger than us. And now at that conference, when it comes to like that segment of the industry, there's 4. And so it's kind of the same demand curve exists, and so we expect there's going to be competition, and then it's going to grow, and then it's going to tail off, and there's going to be less competition, and the most mature companies that navigated that are going to remain. That's what happened in the skate world. We feel like that's what's going to happen in the bike world. We're not focused on our competition, but it certainly makes us better if we have the right perspective. But that's where most of our growth is and is coming from, is like leaning into building destination, quality of life amenities for cities throughout the U.S. and Canada. Any questions right now? How much time do we have? Okay. We have 10 more minutes. And questions would be really great if you have any. Yes, Katie.
How did you navigate the tariff situation?
Yeah. Okay. It was a thing. So we have a Canadian company. We also, we've done stuff in 46 countries in the last couple years because of global politics, the strength of the U.S. dollar, the demand in the U.S. that made us not really need as much international business. We're probably doing about 6 international. We're probably doing projects in 6 different countries year to year over the last 3 or 4 years. It used to be much greater. We still have about 20% of our revenue comes from Canada, from our Canadian ramp company, and those tariffs were certainly a challenge. A unique, and I can tell you this now because they don't exist in the same way, but a unique advantage that we have is we have a company in Canada. So we manufacture all of that equipment in the United States. The cost at which we sell that equipment from our U.S. company to our Canadian company is somewhat what we decide it needs to be. And so because in the U.S. we're not selling directly to a community or a company in Canada, we're selling to ourselves. Our Canadian company just started paying a whole lot less for the manufactured product that came from the United States. I'm sure that's totally legal. Don't tell anybody though, just in case. But really, because we had that structure, it allowed us to get really creative. And we're like, okay, before we would transfer it at MSRP, but there's no reason for that. That Canadian entity could pay, 10% over real raw cost, and that's what we did. Any other? Yes, Mr. Leonardo.
It's a dumb question. I'm going to ask it. What is a pump track, and how does it differ from?
That is a good question, because this is the coolest, the most relevant thing in recreation. Here we go. Oh, here. And so this is will this play sound? If it's fine if it doesn't. So this is actually created by our creative team. They just visited this track. It doesn't play sound. It's fine. I don't know if it's washed out. So this is Castleberry, Florida, which is outside Orlando. This is an asphalt pump track. And so everything with wheels can ride it. It's low maintenance because it's hard surface because it's made out of asphalt. Historically, pump tracks are made out of dirt. And so if you're a little bitty kid on a balance bike, Strider bike, you can go out there and have fun. If you're a professional cyclist, BMX racer, mountain biker, you can also use the exact same facility and have fun. And what's unique and cool about it, the faster you go, the more dynamic the riding experience is. And the faster you go, the more dangerous it is, obviously. But you can't go fast unless you're pretty good. And so it's kind of this it's like one of the safest self-regulating facilities. So unlike a skate park, you can imagine, you've seen like a vert ramp, which is, maybe 10, 12 foot tall. If you don't know how to use that and you try to use it, you're gonna get hurt. A pump track, it's like, well, you can't go fast unless you know how to do it. And so as you get better, you go faster, and then the danger kind of is self-regulating, unlike like a skate park facility or a traditional facility. But that's a pump track. Yes.
Now, will you have one of those in the?
Yes. Yeah, the momentum. That's right. There will be a competition asphalt pump track at the Momentum Bike Park. Something that's really cool because we're based here. There is a international race series, UCI sanctioned pump track race series that was sponsored by Red Bull, and they have usually 3 qualifiers in the United States, and then they have qualifiers in countries all over the world, and then they have a single national championship, which is a total UCI or world championship, UCI World Championship. And this track will be one that's capable of hosting that. So it's possible that one of those qualifiers, there might be 3 that happen in the country, could happen in the Joplin Park. The other cool thing is the company that has influence on where those are also exists in Joplin. So in the next couple years, we'll have a UCI world qualifying race at the Joplin Bike Park. And then the winner of that will go to, like this last year it was in Switzerland to compete in the national or the International Worlds Cup.
Where's this park going to be located?
Do you know the soccer fields, the old Dover soccer fields? So most of the park is in that lower area where the soccer fields were. And then everything to the north up to Zora, are downhill flow trails. So there's 10 miles of trail all combined. There's a world-class asphalt pump track. There's a bicycle playground, which is actually something that we created. And the next question, Chuck, is what's a bicycle playground? Which this is really cool. We realize that a lot of people don't understand, whenever you're talking about getting kids on bikes. We want to grow cycling, and we want safe places to learn to ride bikes. And we take that for granted, but like 50% of 5th graders in the United States don't know how to ride a bike. Most of that's urban. Like, probably not that statistic probably doesn't hold in Joplin, Missouri, but if you take that statistic and go to Philadelphia inner city, it's probably 70%. And that's an absolute travesty. And so in order to help try to combat that, it's like, well, there's not a safe place to ride in a lot of those areas. So most cities build playgrounds. They understand playgrounds. Hey, kids show up, they're fun, they're colorful, they're interactive, they play with other kids. There's a bench for mom to sit on and watch, whereas like a trail network or a bike park, it's really hard to keep an eye on your kid unless you're riding with them. And so we were like, and this is about 8 years ago, I was like meeting with a city talking about this problem, and it was like, why don't we just make playgrounds with it seems like the simplest, that's where it's like, hey, we invented bicycle playgrounds, but why have those not existed all along? It's just one of those, like, this is wild. So we created this concept called bicycle playgrounds, and there's these fun, colorful elements. It's compact. It can be the size of a normal playground. You make a really comfortable bench for mom or dad, grandma, whatever, to sit on, and she can hang out there, read a book, and she can see her kid the entire time, and they can play with other kids. The other benefit is those kids are going to grow up to be kids that are like, okay, what's next? So if we can sell a community a bicycle playground and get more riders, then they're like, okay, now I want a pump track or a bigger bike park, because they're going to age out. So for us, it's also a really great first step, and it's easy to sell that concept to a community because they understand playgrounds. Like the city of LA is like, yeah, we have literally 1,000 playgrounds. It's like, well, how many bicycle playgrounds do you have? It's like, oh, not many. You need to get on that, which they're on it. But this is a concept that we actually created, and this one's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Hot Springs has, there's obviously the racetrack. So you'll see there's distance markers that are slalom poles. That's what those green and yellow poles were. And then also, like so many communities around here, they have a rich railroad history. And so we made this tunnel train. So that was manufactured in Joplin, shipped and installed in Hot Springs. And that tunnel, what's cool is this site used to be a railroad went right through. And so in our planning, we left the train tracks. And so if you're standing there, the train tracks just keep going, and you just ride and turn on that tunnel. So it makes for, you can see right there, there's the continuation of the train tracks. So this is a concept that we actually created, brought to the world. And what's been super cool, we're now seeing landscape architects and park planners and designers that we haven't even talked to. We saw a master plan design proposal in a bike project in BC, British Columbia, which is really a rich, cutting-edge mountain biking area. And we see their master plan, for like Vancouver, British Columbia, and it has like bicycle playground, and it has like our precedent imagery. And it's like, we've never talked to them. And so we've created and put that thing out into the world, which is really exciting. And good for us, because that means more bike parks. If, more bicycle playgrounds mean more bike parks. Yeah. So, most people, action sports, they think liability. That's one of the first things that they think. We have cities when it comes to parks. I mean, there's recreational use statutes that protect them from a statute standpoint. They have insurance. Generally, it's a use at your own risk. Unless there's gross negligence, there's really not a lot of liability. But the reality is, it's still a concern, and that's something that we've had to overcome from a communication standpoint. I was working on a project in Belmar, New Jersey, and the whole community wanted a skate park, the council wanted a skate park, but the mayor was like, absolutely no skate park. Because his concept at the time was like, he'd watch the X Games, and it's like, he's seeing people drop in on 12-foot vert ramps. There are almost no vert ramps in any public skate park. There might be 3, one in Encinitas where Tony Hawk rides at like the YMCA, and then one in Virginia. I mean, there's just no vert ramps in public parks, or shouldn't be. But that was his concept. And then so I was like, well, I'm going to meet with you. Like, everybody wants to do this thing. And this is probably 12 years ago. And I drove around Belmar before I met with him, because I had some time, and it's good to kind of see where's the park going to be, whatever. And I'm driving, and they have public city managed beaches with lifeguards and lifeguard stands or whatever. And so we're talking through this, and of course the statistics are like, you're more likely to be injured playing golf and soccer and whatever than you are skateboarding. That's the insurance actuarial emergency room occurrence statistics. Skateboarding is less dangerous. Skaters would say it's way more dangerous. We just don't go to the doctor. Like, we're tough. That's what they would tell you, and part of that's probably true. And then also the other statistic is 90% of skateboarding injuries happen in the first 5 minutes of getting on a skateboard, and this is why. Because somebody's uncle, who used to maybe have a skateboard or whatever, like, let me try that. And then they just instantly fall over, break a hip or whatever. But I was talking to Belmar, New Jersey, and I said, hey, what's interesting is you have beaches, like you have beaches in your town, and you have lifeguards, and you're responsible for people coming there, and like literally sharks could come eat the participants. And he's like, yeah, I guess that's a lot worse. And between all of that stuff, he's like, yeah, this actually isn't that dangerous. But it is a reality, and it's actually more of a challenge as we get into more cycling infrastructure, and that gets adopted. More people can ride a bike than skateboard, and more people can ride a bike poorly than can skateboard poorly. It's hard to skateboard poorly. Very quickly you're like, I'm over this. But a lot of people can ride a bike. I mean, they grow up riding. It's like, oh, I'm going to try that. Most people aren't going to just walk into a skate park and say, oh, let me try that. It's like, no, that looks way scary. But they're like, I can ride a bike. And so as more of that infrastructure exists, the propensity to have an injury or something like that happen increases. So we have a responsibility as the leader in that industry to create the standards from a warning standpoint, which is signage, from a design standpoint, and that also protects us. So part of our strategy is actually to become the Stepford example. We get sued once a year because we have thousands of parks all over the place. Somebody falls off a bike ramp, and it's like, naturally that's going to happen. And our protection is, we've built thousands of these. That ramp that that person wrecked on, we have 500 installed, and they have been for the last decade. There's signage. It's built per plan, per spec. And so for us, it's actually a really good thing that those considerations are happening, because if a community uses us, like, they couldn't have made a better option. Like, there really wasn't a better option. But if there's a new competitor coming in, and it's like, hey, they've built 3 of these parks, it's like, well, and something happens. It's like, oh, somebody got hurt, which they're gonna get hurt. Like, well, how many parks? Like, who built that? It's like, okay, how much experience do they have? Well, this was their 3rd one, and they're like, was there a better option? It's like, American Ramp Company's built 1,000. Why didn't you use them? And so that actually helps us, and it's really important for us, because the worst thing that could happen is a narrative of like, bike parks are dangerous, and we need to protect we've gotten to the point where we're more than needing to just protect ourselves. We need to protect the industry as a whole and the market as a whole by demanding like a higher standard of safety. So it's kind of a natural progression, but it's what most people, one of the first questions people ask when they think action sports is like, what about liability? What about insurance? So.
Will the momentum have any trails that are suitable for e-bikes? I wonder your thoughts on e-bikes.
Yeah, so pedal assist e-bikes, yes, will be allowed on the entire park. Anything that's throttled or that isn't pedal assist won't. So any motorized throttled thing isn't going to be allowed. And e-bikes are great because they allow more people to be able to ride where maybe they wouldn't. But if they're pedal assist, because e-bikes will go 20 miles an hour in a hurry, and the weight distribution is different. But in general, we design things that allow pedal assist e-bikes, but throttled e-bikes is a completely different segment. And I think the signage will support that as well. Yeah, so the park is Momentum Bike Park. It's going to have, there's about 29 trails altogether. About half of those trails, there's some community involvement, like, hey, those have been ranked. And then there are some trails that were just going to be named based on, hey, they're along the creek. And so it's like, that's going to be Creekside Trail. I mean, that wasn't part of that naming. But in order to get community involvement, that list of names was released and voted on. And then other suggestions were taken in, and some of those were even used. Some things that weren't even on that name or on that original naming list. And one of the plans is one of the more popular trails, because we want community involvement, we want people to come out. One of the more popular trails is going to be unnamed, and we're going to have 3 different naming options and a QR code. And it's like, hey, ride this trail, and for a month, people show up, ride the trail, and then vote for which one of these names based on the experience. And so that one it'll be a driver to the facility, but also just create more community involvement and buy-in in like the process of developing that park.
So throughout your career, you mentioned sales, right? That's one of the things I picked up. Ty is one of my students. He's also into sales. How much of these transferable skills got you to where you are today? I'm sure she would then from that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mentioned sales a lot because that's where I lean. And there's all different. There's a lot of different strengths and weaknesses. One of the most important things is like know who you are. Like sales, marketing. I mean, that's where my interest was. That's what my focus has been in our organization. We have some really good organizational leaders that are very organized. And I would say, well, hey, I'm more sales inspirational than organizational. But I mean, that's what's important. And for us, sales is really just forming a relationship, forming a partnership, and then trying to fulfill and serve a need. And in a lot of cases, educate and paint a picture. One of the things I think is really cool, and everyone's talking about AI, and what does that mean? What are the ramifications? And so, but what I think naturally happens, whether you're applying for a grant or whether you're creating a proposal, it's like the content in that, the narrative content in that, it could be really good. But now everybody's can be really good. And so now even in grant applications, you potentially have a lot of AI written content, and then it's being reviewed by AI, and it's like, hey, everybody scored 100 on that part. And so it's like, okay, level playing field. And the same thing with proposals. It's like you look at a proposal, from maybe one company to the other, and it's like, how did that company's proposals elevate so much? Like, we have a bigger team, we have more firepower, we have more experience. It's like, man, their proposal looks really good, really quick. And it's like they're leaning into AI, which for us is like, okay, that levels the playing field a little bit more. But the personal relationships, the soft skills, and the EQ becomes really, really important. And so I think if that's what you lean to, that's a really good thing. It's like, oh, hey, we welcome that, because now it's like, hey, we're kind of back to this, like, hey, I need to build a personal relationship. I need to understand what those people's needs are, and I need to communicate to them. Because even if you said, it prompted AI to give a proposal, if you don't understand what the original need is, and you haven't gotten that level of communication, then that proposal, it's a lot of white noise. It's really wordy white noise that doesn't necessarily. And so, I think there's this really unique, cool direction where we need to be focused on. We need to understand all those tools, leverage those tools, but can't lose the fact of, I think the artificial intelligence side is actually going to push us more towards, having genuine conversations that are impactful and effective, which is really kind of in that sales, communication, and marketing world. Okay. Well, thank you guys. Yeah, sorry my presentation was corrupt.
All right. Thank you to John for coming and speaking. I wanted to go ahead and talk about our next Entrepreneurship Speaker Series, which is happening on October 22nd. Same building, right in here, same room. This one is actually going to happen at 11 a.m. We want to thank Missouri Southern for allowing us to use their facilities, Center for Entrepreneurship, and in partnership with America's SBDC in Missouri. So if you would like to learn more about this, please visit our website at mssutraining.com. Thank you guys for coming today, and we hope you have a great day.